Hey there, Mark here from the YouTube channel Car Audio Fabrication, and I'm here today on behalf of CT Sounds to show you how I built a custom subwoofer enclosure for a CT Sounds Meso 15. This box will feature internal bracing, corner 45s, a double baffle, some custom template work, and more. Let's get started. To start the build process, we of course need a great box design. For this project, we're going to be using a slot-ported box design. If you would like to build a box like this for your Meso 15, a link to download this design is down in the video description. But remember, it's important to only use this design for your CT Sounds Meso 15-inch subwoofer. To start cutting the 3/4 inch MDF I'm using for this build, I start with marking out all of my cuts using a tape measure and a T-square. I find that it's always better to measure twice and cut once. Next, it's over to the table saw to cut each piece for the enclosure. I typically start with cutting the bottom and top of the enclosure, then the baffles, and back, followed by the sides. As I cut each piece of the design, I check it off so that I know what is done and what I still need to cut. Since this design features corner 45s, I angle my saw blade to 45 degrees and then proceed with cutting those pieces. I move the saw blade fence between each cut to account for the width of the corner 45s. Now that I have all the pieces of the enclosure cut, I can move on to doing the detail work. Since this is a powerful subwoofer with its 1500 watts RMS rating, it is important that the box has internal bracing. For this, I'm making a window brace. I start with marking out all of the cuts. I now need to rough cut the windows, so I drill holes in the corners, and then proceed to rough cut using a jigsaw. I save a little bit of material since I'll be doing the final cut on the router. To cut the final shape, I'm using the Mobile Solutions Fukuda square. I size this tool to the correct window size and then secure it to the brace using double-sided template tape. Over at the router table, I've loaded in a flush trim bit. This bit copies the shape of the square to the window brace. I repeat this process 4 times to make the completed window brace. Now it's time to do the detail work on the baffle. I start with marking out the center of my mounting hole circle and then with the lines for the port. All of this dimensional information is provided in the design blueprint. Next, I use a piece of cardboard and a push pin along with a pencil to sketch out my mounting hole. This is part of the measure twice, cut once motto that I have and will be beneficial in a second when I set up my router to make the cut. I start with drilling a pivot hole at the center of the circle. This gives me a hole for my Mobile Solutions Perfect Circle tool to pivot upon. I then adjust the tool so that it will cut using my spiral trim bit at the edge of that circle. Now I can turn on the router, plunge into the material, and make a pass, thus cutting the circle. After cutting the circle, it is always best to check that the subwoofer fits. Looks like I'm good to go. To cut out the port, I drill corner holes and rough cut using the jigsaw in preparation for the router. Keep in mind that if you do not have a router, you can always use a jigsaw to make these cuts. I stick straight templates to the wood using double-sided template tape, and then it's over to the router where I once again use the flush trim bit to cut everything out. Now since this box is double baffled, I want to make sure that I have the same porthole on both pieces, so I copy the porthole to my second baffle using the flush trim bit. Now on the second baffle, I could simply cut a larger hole for the subwoofer to flush mount into, but I want to do some custom template work instead. I begin with sketching the outer diameter of the subwoofer. I then use Mobile Solutions Smart Templates to come up with a design for my baffle. With this design laid out, I rough cut the shape. I then stick the templates to the baffle with double-sided template tape, and then copy them on the router once again using the flush trim bit. Since I know I want a template shape to sit nested down into the second baffle, I keep my 2 pieces taped together and transfer that shape to a new piece of wood. With this shape transferred, I rough cut it using the jigsaw. Now this time on the router, I'm doing something a little bit differently. I start with doing the outer profile of the shape using my normal router bit. For the inside of the shape though, I'm using an offset bearing which allows me to make the shape much thicker. With this piece fully cut, I check that it fits on the baffle. Looks good. Now it's time to move on to edge profiling. Edge profiling is adding a rounded or chamfered edge to the various pieces. In the case of my baffle insert, it's just there to look more pleasing to the eye. I also do this on the port end pieces so the air flows more smoothly over the corner of the port inside the box. The same is true for the brace. I round over all internal edges for the windows. I also do this on the overall shape of the baffle. For the port entrance on the baffle, I raise the bit slightly. This will make a hard edge cut into the piece that I can use later to precisely trim the carpet. Here you can see the baffle and all the pieces are looking great, but I'm not done quite yet. I've loaded up the slide router bit. This will give the inside of my insert template an even cooler look. To get rid of the hard edge that is left, I use a mini roundover bit. With all the router work complete, it's time to move on to assembly. I always start with assembling the back, bottom, and one side of the box. Important notes here are to always fully cover each mating surface with wood glue. With 3 sides assembled, this is also a great time to check and make sure that the box fits in the vehicle. After that, I add my other side to the assembly. Next, I can move on to making the port assembly. I start with connecting the 2 port walls. Next, I attach a corner 45 to add strength to this connection. At the end of the port, I attach a port end brace piece. Next, I attach the window port to this assembly. The port assembly is now complete and ready to be installed into the box. Before I do so though, I need to attach the front baffles. I cover all the surfaces with glue and then nail the first baffle board in position. I then follow up with the second baffle board. Next, I can add the port assembly into the box and then nail it into position. Now I have to add the remainder of the corner 45s into the enclosure. With these steps complete, the enclosure is nearly done. I just need to add the lid of the box. To do this, I apply glue to all surfaces, add the lid, and then nail everything into position. Since it can be difficult to know exactly where to nail in order to secure the port walls, I measure out lines and draw so that I know exactly where I need to apply each nail. The enclosure is now completely assembled. Let's move on to adding a speaker terminal. For this project, I'm using a speaker terminal from Steve Mead Designs. I've created this cutout template to use as a guide. I mark the location on the box, drill the corners, and then rough cut. Next, I stick my template piece in position and make my final cuts using a router with a top-bearing flush trim bit. The speaker terminal now fits snugly into place. To finish the subwoofer box, I'll be applying carpet and paint. I start with painting the surfaces that will be seen. I use a black primer paint first to seal the wood, and then follow up with a textured paint. I've decided that I want to put a piece of grill mesh behind the template piece, so I carefully mark it so that I can cut it to shape. Over at the box, I mask off all of the surfaces that I don't want the upholstery glue to stick to. Now it's time to start applying the upholstery glue. I apply this one surface at a time to both the box and the carpet. After allowing 5 to 10 minutes for it to dry, I carpet that surface. I repeat this procedure to cover all sides of the box. When I do the front baffle, I carefully push the carpet into a groove that I had cut earlier on the back side of the second baffle piece. This groove gives me a spot to hide the carpet seam. It also gives me a spot to easily run my razor blade to make a clean, precise cut. This leaves us with a very clean looking front baffle. On the bottom of the box, I cut the carpet overlap using a straight edge so that I can work the 2 pieces of carpet back together. It is important to always have the seam on the bottom of the box so that it will not be seen. Now I move on to the sides of the box. I start with applying adhesive. After it dries, I cut all the corners so that I have 4 flaps. I then fold one of these flaps onto the box and I work the carpet into a wooden groove that I cut earlier using a rabbiting bit. I repeat this process working each flap into a groove and then cutting it. This leaves me with the exposed side piece. I can apply a piece of carpet to it, work all the edges into the grooves, and cut it out as well. Now since this side has the hole for the wire terminal, I make those cuts for it. Finally, I can install the wire terminal and secure it using the wood screws. To complete the insert template, I first glue the grill mesh to the back side of the insert using CA glue. Next, I need a way to secure this insert to the box. For this, I'll be using threaded wooden inserts. I drill 4 holes for the wooden inserts, and I'm careful not to go too deep as I don't want to break through the opposite side of the wood. Next, I secure the wooden inserts using an Allen wrench. Finally, I can secure my template shape using 4 stainless steel fasteners. The insert shape is complete, and all I need to do now is of course apply wiring and install the subwoofer and secure it in position using mounting hardware. And there we have it, a completed custom subwoofer enclosure for the CT Sounds Meso 15. If you would like to see more videos like this on the CT Sounds channel, be sure to drop us a comment and subscribe. And if you would like to see more custom fabrication videos, please visit my channel at youtube.com/Car Audio Fabrication. Thanks for watching.